Today on Jay Sekulow Live, President Trump has authorized the declassification of all documents pertaining to the Russia hoax and Hillary Clinton's emails. This is huge, folks. We're also going to be joined by U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn. She's on the Judiciary Committee to discuss the confirmation, the hearings of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. Call 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. And now, your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Welcome to Jay Sekulow Live. Well, as you know, the last couple weeks, we have learned that the intelligence community picked up Russian intel that Hillary Clinton was going to try and blame Russia and say that Russia was working with the Trump campaign. So not just blame Russia, but say that they were working in tandem with the Trump campaign. And they were the reason why her server was hacked, and they were going to try to distract from the fact that she was using a private email server to conduct business, which violated all these policies. James Comey, he used words that weren't illegal words, but they meant the same thing. Like, it was reckless, but it wasn't. He didn't use the key words that would make it a crime in his press conference, which doesn't mean it wasn't. It was just interesting. Remember, we danced around that, and we now know that Russian intel picked up not only that they were going to get blamed, but that the whole idea of the Trump campaign working with Russia was put together by someone on Hillary Clinton's foreign policy staff, and that it would help distract. And of course, we've called this a hoax the entire time. We've lived it as the president's attorneys, and we've gone through the special counsel. There are still people like Adam Schiff. There's still people like Peter Strzok on TV saying the president's a Russian agent. And we now know that it appears that the source of this entire beginning of this is like pre-Christopher Steele, before Peter Strzok even knew about any of this, was just a rumor by Hillary Clinton's campaign staff that Hillary Clinton okayed, it appears. And it got to the level where the CIA director, Brennan, was actually going to President Obama and Jim Comey with the information. Now we have the notes. We'll go through those notes from Brennan. A lot of it, as you can see if you're watching on the broadcast, has been redacted. But here's what's key to this. President Trump tweeted this morning. By the way, he has this power. Absolutely, as President of the United States, he can declassify anything he wants. No questions asked. I have fully authorized the total declassification of any and all documents pertaining to the single greatest political crime. And let me tell you, folks, I've said Bob Mueller should be behind bars, but other people should be too. Pertaining to the single greatest political crime in American history, the Russia hoax. Likewise, the Hillary Clinton email scandal. So both those topics, no redactions. You don't do that as president if you're not 100% confident, as the president has been throughout, by calling this a hoax and a witch hunt, that this will only shed light on this being a hoax and a witch hunt. Then this shakes up Washington, D.C. to its core, and it's President Trump at its best, because he's got the power to order it. He's got enough info where it makes sense, because you've got all these reports coming out to the Senate Intel Committee. We've got Brennan's notes now we're going to go through. Marsha Blackburn, U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, who's also on the Judiciary Committee, is going to be joining us in the next segment of the broadcast. We'll talk Judge Barrett, the hearings. We're going to talk a little about Brennan too. But then this is what shakes Washington to its core, brings it to its knees.
It's a breathtaking revelation, Jordan. I mean, look, I was already convinced that everyone was in on it, and it went all the way to the White House, went all the way to President Obama, Vice President Biden. I was convinced because of the Susan Rice email, the text messages that we already had. But, Jordan, this is it in black and white, and the president has made it available to us. Look, everyone was in on the fix, and, Jordan, they did not investigate those who were doing wrong. They investigated the target of those who were doing wrong. Pretty shocking, Jordan.
Folks, I want to take your phone calls on this, 1-800-684-3110. We're going to be joined by a great guest, U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn. She's on that Judiciary Committee to talk about the hearings upcoming on Judge Barrett as the Democrats try to obstruct it, try to stop it. We'll talk about Brennan as well and this new information about declassifying the documents. Be right back on Jay Sekulow Live. Share this with your friends and family. Welcome to Jay Sekulow Live. This is Jordan Sekulow. And folks, we are joined right now by U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. She is on the Senate Judiciary Committee. You see her often in the media speaking out. She happens to be one of my U.S. senators in Washington, D.C. So it's great to have her on today. And Senator Blackburn, thanks for joining us today on Jay Sekulow Live.
I am delighted to join you. Thank you so much. And sounds like you all are talking about one of the hot topics of the day, which is our SCOTUS nomination.
Absolutely. And you know what? Everybody listening to this broadcast right now, Senator Blackburn, they want to know because they see the hijinks, they see the mainstream media reports, and they're getting nervous, more and more nervous by the day. You're on the Senate Judiciary Committee. What would be your message to them right now? You've got a couple of members that came down with COVID on the Republican side. Hearings are scheduled to start on the 12th next week. So what would your initial message be to them about their nervousness?
We are going to get this nomination through the process and get her confirmed. We have been doing hybrid hearings since COVID started. These are approved by the Senate Rules Committee. Amy Klobuchar, who has been opposed to doing the hybrid hearing for the Supreme Court nominee, has supported and was a part of how they structured these hearings. We've done 21 hearings this way. So we're going to have 4 days of hearings. They will be the hybrid setup. You can come virtually or in person. And then we are going to move forward with a vote to move her from committee. And then the last week of October, we'll have her on the floor for a confirmation vote. And hopefully the president will swear her in immediately.
So the fact that Democrats are saying, well, and I think you're absolutely right, Senator Blackburn, about the idea, and we're joined by U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. She's on the Senate Judiciary Committee for these hearings. What do you expect it to be like on October 12th? Are you because the hybrid hearing's been normal. We've seen that. We saw Jim Comey testify last week from his house. Some senators were there. Some were via remote. Do you plan on going in person, or is the kind of idea to keep it the chairman and the witness, if you will, Judge Barrett, to kind of see how things are going during the questioning period? And how hypocritical do you think, Senator Blackburn, this idea, because Chuck Schumer said, they've got to be able to look her in the eye. Not a single Democrat will even meet with her privately one-on-one, where they'd all have a chance to look her in the eye.
Well, that's the thing. They have the opportunity to meet with her. They have chosen not to sit down with her and ask her specific questions. They have given up that opportunity. So what are they going to do now? They're saying, well, we may not even show up or participate at all because, and their code word of the week, we think this is illegitimate. Well, you know what? It is not. We're following procedure and process. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed in 42 days, Sandra Day O'Connor, 33 days, Justice Stevens in 19 days. We are within the framework. The president is doing his constitutional duty. We are doing our constitutional duty by providing advice and consent. Now, if the Democrats do not want to do their job, that's up to them and their voters. But we are going to do our job.
So let me go to Than Bennett in Washington, D.C. Than is our government affairs director, Senator Blackburn. I know he's followed this very closely and the rules, these issues, and then, for the Judiciary Committee. And Than, I know you had a question, too, about, when it comes down to the vote on the committee hearing, when you're supposed to be in person and the rules there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a couple things, Senator Blackburn. First of all, thank you for being with us. I wanted to ask about your impression from having met with Judge Barrett. Obviously, Jordan said that the Democrats have not been willing to. I know you sat with her. We obviously can see her very impressive resume, but I was just wondering if you could give our listeners some feedback of your impressions of the judge when you did sit down and meet with her. And then secondarily, I am a little interested in how the committee will handle whether or not a proxy vote is allowed in case a senator still is suffering from the virus or has another reason to miss. I know that proxy votes do happen sometimes in committee. Is there any indication from the chairman whether or not that will be in play at this point if it's needed?
Well, there has not been an indication on that. And I've talked with the senators that have been affected by the virus, and everyone seems to be recovering well. We do have proxy voting for our nominees. and that is often done. Senator Harris has voted by proxy most of this year, and we're going to continue with our regular processes in the Senate Judiciary Committee.
So Senator Blackburn, if you're able to go through the regular process, you maybe some proxy during the hearing, not proxy votes, but people are remote during the hearing, which is normal. We have seen Nancy Pelosi use proxy voting, though, in the House. You've been impressed. People are so excited about Judge Barrett. I think that's why they're so nervous. They know that the Democrats will do anything possible, Senator Blackburn, to try and stop this. What's been interesting is that, they want to call her a handmaid. They want to call her this. They went after her children, her adopted children. But now it's like it's a process fight. It's a very Washington, D.C. swampy fight of you can't get the votes, you're being dangerous somehow. But you've been operating throughout throughout COVID, being able to do the work of the American people. The people standing in the way have been Democrats. They're in the minority in the Senate, but we knew they're going to pull every stunt they can to try and delay this and try and get past the election at least.
Well, of course, we know that they're going to try every possible stunt. And bear in mind, they thought that having the hybrid hearings might be a way to slow down what we were doing in the Senate. But people have enjoyed being able to do the hybrid hearings and continue our work. I think that this is something you may see happen more often, even after we get past COVID. But what we do know is this. We have a responsibility to fill an opening. And I would just say this. People that are trying to say this has never happened before, go back and look at John Adams putting John Marshall on the court. They did that in January after he had lost the election. So we're going through the process that we are constitutionally mandated to do, and they're going to try to delay. They're going to try to fuss about it. They've got the mainstream media working with them. COVID is something they're going to continue to talk about, but we're going to do our job.
I know Tennesseans are excited about that. The American people are excited about that as well because you've got fans all across the country. Senator Blackburn, one more question on Judge Barrett as you prepare for those hearings. What do you expect for not? I know kind of how the Republican type questions. I think Republicans ask much fairer questions to any nominee to give them the opportunity to explain their judicial philosophy. It appears like the Democrats want to go towards she's going to overturn Roe versus Wade, or she is a religious radical. They've done that to her before, and the fact that they did that to her, one of your colleagues, Dianne Feinstein, did that to her, made her a household name in the conservative world, the audience that you're talking to right now.
Well, you're exactly right on that. And Feinstein's comment about religion, Kamala Harris attacking the Knights of Columbus, Durbin's comment, all of these. Here's the thing, Jordan. It is constitutionally prohibited to have a litmus test, a religious litmus test. You can't do that in the United States. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to do that. And basically saying, here is a woman who is active in her faith, in the application of that faith, and in her church. And by the way, she takes her 7 children to church every single Sunday. So what they're trying to say is you can't do that. That's not allowed. But I don't think they're going to get by with that. You've got millions of moms in this country that take their kids to church, to youth groups, to Bible study groups, and they encourage that for their children. So I think that they are I think they're in the wrong on this. They're going to overplay their hands, and quite frankly, I think that in their overplaying their hands, they are going to end up helping us and helping more of the people, American people, to know about Judge Amy Coney Barrett. And they'll look at her and say, if she was my neighbor, if she was my professor, if she was involved in my community, I would welcome her.
Senator Blackburn, it was great to have you. Thanks for joining us live today on the broadcast. And to all of us out there, keep doing what you're doing. Keep fighting for us and for the people of Tennessee and for the conservatives all across the country. We appreciate so much you being outspoken, talking to the media, being out there, informing our listeners. I'm sure they all feel a lot better right now knowing that you'll be there at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, helping to push this along. Thank you, Senator Blackburn. All right, folks, we're going to be right back on Jay Sekulow Live. There was your update right from a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee live on Judge Barrett's, how the hearings will play out, how this is going to work out. And again, you can't get better information than from U.S. senators on the committee themselves. We're going to get into Brennan, Russia, the president's tweet when we get back. All right, again, it was great to have U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn. She's on the Senate Judiciary Committee. She'll be there, at the hearings, kind of pushing back on the narrative so many of you are hearing in the mainstream media, making people nervous about Judge Barrett's potential confirmation because of 2 U.S. senators happen to be Republican on the committee coming down with COVID. But as you heard from her, they're going to work to push this through and get Judge Barrett confirmed. First, it goes through the committee hearing. That starts next week. That will get out of committee around the 22nd. And then it will be probably around 26th to the 30th, somewhere in there, where the U.S. Senate could have a vote. The votes appear to be there without the need for Vice President Pence. And if he is needed, he can cast tie-breaking votes both for cloture to be the 51st vote and for the 51st vote to confirm Judge Barrett. But again, I want to follow this closely. We're going to continue to reach out to members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, like Senator Blackburn, to get updates on this because you're going to hear from the media, this is dangerous. This shouldn't of course, you already heard this shouldn't happen, even though history shows it always happens. And this is part of elections having consequences. Republican president, Republican Senate, they get confirmed 17 out of 19 times so far. So this would be, if she gets confirmed, Judge Barrett, 18 out of 20 times. So it's 90% that you'll get confirmed in this kind of scenario, during the election year, when you have the same party in charge of the White House, president, as the Senate. If you flip that around, like what President Obama had to deal with, it goes the exact opposite. It's 2 out of 10. So it's a 90% chance you're going to fail. It's going to be very rare that you get someone through when you don't control, your party does not control the U.S. Senate. And again, this is all in the Senate's hands now. The president did his job. He made the nomination, Than. But I do want to go right to, so we're going to keep people updated on Judge Barrett. We're working on the Hill. You can update people quickly on that, Than. But we've got huge breaking news because we've all heard, Than, about the fact that the Obama administration, the CIA, and Brennan knew that the Russians' intel figured out from that, we were spying on them. They were spying on the Clinton campaign, I guess. But it was because they knew that they were coming up in the Clinton campaign as going to be a kind of someone to blame, to distract from the fact that she had a private email server and was conducting business on it, classified documents, the FBI investigating. We know all that, what happened with Comey. But not only that Russia was going to get blamed, but that Hillary Clinton's advisor told her, and she accepted this plan, that we'll tie the Russians and say they're working with the Trump campaign. We know now that Brennan, at least sometime after July 28th, 2016, because that's in his notes that I'm holding in my hands right now, briefed the president on this, briefed Jim Comey on this, briefed Dennis McDonough, the White House chief of staff, on this, and Susan Rice, the national security advisor, on this, Than. Then Jim Comey just testified he never even heard about it. And the CIA, we have a document here with redactions, but the CIA giving the information to the FBI on this so they could conduct an investigation. And who is it to? Peter Strzok. So the idea that they didn't know about this is false. We don't know if they ever even investigated it. It doesn't appear that they did.
Well, look, the testimony from former Director Comey that it did not ring a bell, Jordan, I got to tell you, that's just a lie. I mean, there's just no other explanation other than that it was a lie. I do, just quickly, two parting comments about what we heard from Senator Blackburn. She mentioned, and people really need to hear this, Jordan, Senator Harris, running for vice president, has been voting by proxy inside the committee for months now. So the idea that the senators might be allowed to do that is not out of step with the norm. In fact, it's right within the norm. Senator Harris has been doing it. And secondly, the reason you quoted the statistics about whether or not the Senate controls, the same party controls the Senate as controls the White House, Jordan, that's important because the reason these powers were separated between the branches was to give the American people a midterm opportunity to come back and say, do we want to affirm the president? Do we want to check the president? That was by design. But on this breaking news, Jordan, and just we talked about it a little bit in the first segment of the broadcast, but I was already convinced that the White House was well aware of this because of what we knew prior to this. We knew about the January 5th Oval Office meeting. It was mostly about Flynn and the quote-unquote Russia threat. We also knew that Obama, that briefing was well known inside the FBI. I mean, agents, Jordan, were talking about the fact that Obama had been briefed. This was a regular practice. This was something that was ongoing. But now, in black and white, in these declassified documents that we have today, we know that Director Brennan was directly briefing the president, not just about what was happening, Jordan, but about the fact that Hillary Clinton had approved the scheme. So if that's sort of the groundwork that you lay, Jordan, the question that it begs for me was, if there was a campaign to be investigated, why was that campaign not Hillary Clinton's? If there was a thought that maybe there was one campaign or another cooperating with a foreign power to alter the elections, doesn't the information show that the campaign that might have been worth investigating was Hillary Clinton's? And yet we know that that was not the course that was taken. They took the bait from the Hillary Clinton campaign, and they went on this multi-year effort to investigate the Trump campaign. I got to tell you, Jordan, the cat is out of the bag. This is no longer speculation. It's in black and white, and there are more documents coming. But for my money, Jordan, we might have more smoking guns, but for my money, we have all that we need. We know that everyone was in on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is. I want to go through the letter for everybody. This is John Brennan's notes. It was declassified just recently. I mean, just yesterday, and not all of it has been. But now, Dan, the president has said to declassify everything. So no redactions, no redactions. He has the power as the president of the United States to declassify anything he wants, whatever he wants, no questions asked. And so we should be getting this very soon. And a lot more information without any of these markings. He's about had it with going through the FOIA process and this process, and he doesn't have to. He's the president of the United States. He can do it. And there's a good reason to now because we have this new information shed to light. This is not like rehashing an old story about Hillary Clinton's private server. We knew 2 weeks ago that there's a story developing that the CIA knew that her campaign, let me read John Brennan memo. This is John Brennan's own notes. We're citing alleged approval by Hillary Clinton on July 28th, 2016, of a proposal from one of her foreign policy advisors to vilify, folks, he uses the word vilify, Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal, claiming interference by the Russian security service in collaboration with the Trump campaign and Russia. He provides this information. It says POTUS on here. Obama. JC. That's not Jesus Christ. That's Jim Comey. Dennis McDonough, the White House Chief of Staff, and Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor. I mean, I couldn't even put this in more words. He used the word vilify, that Hillary Clinton approved a plan to vilify President Trump by saying he was colluding with the Russians to hack into the server.
And the notes are from a briefing of who? President Obama. Look, he was in on it. He knew about it. He was orchestrating it. And by the way, you mentioned Dennis. I mean, no shock. Dennis McDonough is one of the ones that unmasked General Flynn. So they were all very deep in it. I would say one thing really quickly, though, Jordan. Now that the president has ordered this declassification, it is up to Director Wray and Director Haspel and others inside the intelligence agencies who have some sense of ownership over these documents. Jordan, they respond to the President of the United States. These documents ought to be forthcoming.
All right, folks. We're going to take your calls on this. 1-800-684-3110. Andy Economou is going to be joining us. It's great to be joined by U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn on Judge Barrett's hearings upcoming next week for the Supreme Court. We'll be right back.
Because of your support, because of the support of every member of the ACLJ, one of the practice areas that we've been able to develop is Freedom of Information Act requests, or FOIA requests.
It's thousands of pages of paper, and in those thousands of pages of paper, you usually find a nugget.
Government agencies acting out of control.
We have exposed that in our FOIA litigation, and we do that every day that we bring these cases.
It is your statutory right as an American citizen to have access to documents that reveal how the government is functioning, how your government is functioning.
We took it to the IRS. No one ever does that.
What the IRS was doing was violating the Constitution and statutory law. They can't do what they were doing before.
They've been hiding behind in the shadows. These FOIAs bring them to light.
How do we know? Because our FOIA litigation got that document.
Those of you that support the ACLJ, this is what it's all about at the end of the day.
Think we haven't been on this, folks? We've been on it.
Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. And now, your host, Jordan Sekulow.
So the President of the United States has said enough is enough with you, Chris Wray, with this FOIA process, with DOJ, CIA, FBI, NSA. Rick Grinnell, our special advisor, who's former acting director of national intelligence, was attacked on Twitter by Mike Hayden, former CIA director. They're scared, folks. They are so scared. This is. You want to talk about draining the swamp? How about putting the swamp behind bars? Because you release all of this, guess who has access to it? Durham prosecutors. They don't have to go. They don't have to do it. They have to go beg for these documents, work through all these classifications, go to SCIFs to read them. That's these secure rooms. They're open to the public. You got every law enforcement agency in the country can utilize those documents, and the president just said it. I mean, he tweeted out, "I have fully authorized the total declassification of any and all documents pertaining to two things. The single greatest political crime, and that he is true, in American history, the Russia hoax. Likewise, the Hillary Clinton email scandal." And he ends with what I love, none of these blacked out pages. No redactions. I want to go to Andy Economou, senior counsel with the ACLJ. Andy, the President of the United States has the absolute authority to declassify whatever he wants. And this is not, kicking the same can of Hillary Clinton's email server, because we got new information, started a couple weeks ago, that the CIA picked up intel that Russia knew they were going to get blamed, and that they were going to try to vilify, in Brennan's words, Donald Trump, by saying it was the Trump campaign and Donald Trump working with Russians to hack into her server.
Yes, this was a very carefully planned, financed, and executed idea behind what we know today and call the Russian hoax. And it was planned, financed, and executed by one of the most corrupt politicians ever to hit the American scene, and that's Hillary Clinton. The intel agencies knew about it. They briefed Obama about it. Biden was aware of it. And yet, where is the voices of the left from Adam Schiff? Where are the voices on MSNBC? Where is the bombshell that is being ignored by the left totally? Imagine concocting a scheme to come up with some plan to say that the President of the United States, while a candidate, was being placed in collusion with the Russians in order to assure his candidacy resulted in his election. And now we know that it was a complete hoax masterminded by Hillary Clinton, executed by the U.S. intelligence agencies, by Brennan and by his cohorts. And what we did, Jordan, was put this president under torture in the Mueller investigation for almost 3 years. He was tortured, and his presidency nearly derailed by having to answer nonsense allegations that were concocted and totally fabricated by the corrupt Democrats.
Folks, I mean, just what you can read from Brennan now. And soon we should be able to see a lot more, including all these marks removed. I'm briefing the president. This happened after July 28th, 2016. Citing alleged approval by Hillary Clinton on July 28th of a proposal. So she approved it. From one of her foreign policy advisors to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming interference by the Russian security service and collaboration between the Trump campaign and Russia in regards to her email server and to try and distract from that server. That is the origins of the special counsel. It wasn't even Steele. Christopher Steele was just making up stuff so that Peter Strzok could have something else, because Peter Strzok got notice of it, folks. He got it from the CIA, which is not all the time that they share intel like that with the FBI. And they did. We have that document as well. So they knew about it, and yet they continued their hoax. He's still on TV saying the president is a Russian agent. Shame on him. He should be behind bars. We'll be right back.
Because of your support, because of the support of every member of the ACLJ, one of the practice areas that we've been able to develop is Freedom of Information Act requests, or FOIA requests.
It's thousands of pages of paper, and in those thousands of pages of paper, you usually find a nugget.
The goal here is to gather the puzzle pieces. Sometimes you don't know which ones will be important until they become important.
Government agencies acting out of control.
We have exposed that in our FOIA litigation, and we do that every day that we bring these cases.
It is your statutory right as an American citizen to have access to documents that reveal how the government is functioning, how your government is functioning.
Do you remember the Iran deal? There was a video about what took place on that deal, and it was edited. And the edit took out the key part of what was going on. State Department, White House, editing videos to keep it from the American public.
How do we know? Because our FOIA litigation got that document.
We took it to the IRS. No one ever does that. And because of it, it's a very weak government agency that used to be the scary government agency.
What the IRS was doing was violating the Constitution and statutory law. Because of the litigation we engaged in, it's a different agency. They can't do what they were doing before.
And they've been hiding behind in the shadows. These FOIAs bring them to light.
All of this information came because we went to court to get the information.
Many times when we make these requests, the requests actually end up in court as the bureaucracy fights back to withhold the information. But that's okay, because the law is on our side. We are entitled to the information that is in these requests that we have made.
We've got the declassified list of Obama administration officials who started asking to unmask.
We have caught them now.
They have no one in there to protect them anymore. They were used to the bureaucracy protecting them.
Those of you that support the ACLJ, this is what it's all about at the end of the day.
Think we haven't been on this, folks? We've been on it. All right, welcome back to Jay Sekulow Live. Can you believe just last week Jim Comey said this in his testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee?
You don't remember getting a investigatory lead from the intelligence community? September the 7th, 2016, the U.S. intelligence officials forwarded an investigative referral of FBI to FBI Director James Comey and Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok regarding U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. You don't remember getting that or being taught? That doesn't ring
bells with me.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty stunning thing. It didn't ring a bell, but it did come to you.
So we know it came to him. We know it came to Peter Strzok. What we don't know, Andy, and this is, it appears that it wasn't, because Jim Comey would probably have known if it was, since he was making announcements about Hillary Clinton all the time. I think he's lying there in the sense that he doesn't remember, but he's trying to, it's like taking the fifth without taking the fifth by saying, I just don't remember. So he's not saying it did or didn't happen, but that would lead me to believe that that they didn't investigate it at all, that they ignored this, that Peter Strzok ignored this and went along, got their dossier, and went and got FISAs on American citizens with information where people now have pled guilty to crimes to get those FISAs. That American citizen, Carter Page, happened to be a U.S. asset, cover blown. So this is, and now we know Hillary Clinton herself was behind this entire Russia hoax. She created it with her campaign to cover for her illegal activity with her server. And Obama knew, Susan Rice knew, Andy, Dennis McDonough, the White House chief of staff to Obama, knew, Jim Comey knew, Peter Strzok knew, and of course the CIA director Brennan, he knew.
Yeah, and not only them, but Joe Biden knew
Joe
too,
Biden,
Jordan. I mean, Joe Biden was called aside from the meeting in the Oval Office by the president, by Obama, and that great paragon of virtue, Sally Yates, was with him, and he started talking about this thing and how we're going to deep six the presidential candidate and how we're going to try to harm him. Look, they were all in on this thing. Brennan briefed Hillary Clinton and, rather, President Obama on Clinton's plan to tie Donald Trump to the Russia as a means of distracting the public. This is what this was, from her use of the private email server prior to the 2016 presidential election. That's what happened. And he was caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He can't deny that. This was an entire plan concocted by Clinton, conspired into and bought into by Brennan, known by Biden, your presidential candidate, known by the President Obama, known by Sally Yates and everybody in the inner circle to divert attention from what Hillary Clinton was doing and to concoct a hoax, a lie, a complete mountain of misinformation with respect to collusion by Donald Trump, which never happened with the Russians. And this was being done by your government, the government which is now seeking to return into power, Jordan. This is the same cast of characters, Biden and his entourage, Biden, the Trojan horse, and his entourage from the left, seeking to return into power again. Having concocted this scheme, having planned this idea to bring them in, because Sally Yates will be your new attorney general. I'm telling you that right now if Biden gets elected. And it's bringing them all back in again. And they've been caught now with these CIA memos that the president has ordered to be declassified and put out in public. You can't hide it anymore.
Folks, I want to go right to the phones, 1-800-684-3110. Kim has been holding on. Let's get Kim a copy of the next red wave from Pennsylvania. First, I'll ask you, Kim, this. Pennsylvania, very key state in the election. I don't know what part of the state you're calling from, but I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of what you think is going to, where you think momentum's going, because I think polling is always off with President Trump and has been even before President Trump, and he certainly is even tougher to poll. And then go ahead with your question.
I'm sorry, you were cutting out a little bit, but I'm so angry right now. I called in like a half hour ago. I've been on hold.
Yep.
And I was in a fairly okay frame of mind, but after listening to everybody that was just on right now, I'm just so angry. I want to know, basically, to get to the point, these documents, declassifying these documents that the president is doing, unredacted. How do we know that these documents aren't going to disappear and lose me before anybody really gets the information from them? How do we know that we're going to get all this real unredacted information?
You know what's wild about that is, first of all, once the president issues an order like this, that's it. I mean, of course, there be bureaucrats say, well, I don't know if we should do this. It doesn't really matter anymore. He's ordered them to do it. If they don't do it now, he could fire them. You can actually fire bureaucrats for not carrying out these orders. That would be for cause. Remember, you can get rid of your political appointees easily, but bureaucrats harder. You have to have a reason. Not following a command that's lawful by the president, that would be a reason. So this should happen very quickly, Than, but the swamp will try to push back and delay this even with the president's order. I don't think he would have issued this tweet without also, talking to his team, being prepared to go to these agencies and say, give it time. Your time's up. It's all going public now.
Yeah, I think he's serious about this, Jordan. I would tell you a couple of things. First of all, I understand Kim's frustration, but my first reaction was, I think if there's a bureaucrat that defies this order, I think they will be fired with cause. And Jordan, look, I think there might be political appointees who are inclined to drag their feet on this, and I don't think the president will have any patience for them. I mean, I already mentioned in this broadcast two individuals who I think have done a good job in many respects, Director Wray and Director Haspel. Jordan, it really doesn't matter whether or not they agree or disagree with the president at this point. He has made a decision. He has given them an order, and they need to produce it. So they need to make sure that their teams are falling in line to produce the documents that the commander-in-chief has instructed to be released. Jordan, the other thing I would tell Kim, and this is something I really want people to key in on this really helps organizations like ours who are actually fighting for this information from the outside through Freedom of Information Act requests. And I want to give a very specific reason why. When we get documents back, Jordan, and you've been through this with our audience many times, they often are littered with redactions. But one of the most common redactions is what's called a B1 redaction. And that redaction takes place whenever the information is classified. And here's the specific term. It's a B1 redaction applies to material which is properly classified pursuant to an executive order in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. So, Jordan, what that means is we can now go back through the litigation that we're already engaged in on issues involving unmasking. Hello, Joe Biden. Hello, Dennis McDonough. Involving the plan that James Comey had to put spies inside the Trump White House. That litigation is ongoing. Jordan, all of the information that we've got, if it's got a B1 redaction on it, this now means we can go back during the course of our litigation and, where appropriate, say that classification has now changed by order of the President of the United States. We want to see the information underneath that redacting. So, yes, it depends on one side on bureaucrats, Jordan, but in our FOIA litigation, it doesn't depend on bureaucrats. We'll take it right to the court.
Exactly. Crystal in Ohio on line 1. Crystal, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live. You're on the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call, first of all. Second, I'm just kind of wondering if, in light of the Russian hoax situation here, will there be any media coverage on the left side? Will they be held accountable?
No, they will not cover this. They will not cover this. Absolutely not. They will not be forced to cover it until people are being their homes are being raided and they're being arrested. I mean, Andy, obviously you get Fox News, you get more outlets like ours spending the time to actually go through the documents, not just giving you 5-minute, television hits on it, but spending most of the broadcast today on that, and then having a U.S. Senator on about the confirmation hearings for a Supreme Court justice with Senator Blackburn, and she was ready to talk on this. We just ran out of time because we had a lot to talk about with Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Barrett, but I don't think that the CNNs of the world will really pick up on this, and certainly not the MSNBCs, until people start getting arrested and their homes start getting raided.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jordan, entirely. This is not anything that MSNBC, CNN, or any of the other NBC, ABC, they're not going to carry this. This is not important to them because it doesn't meet their agenda. Understand, their agenda is to promote the candidacy, the election of Joe Biden as President of the United States. Joe Biden, who was in the midst of this, in the Oval Office, being briefed, figuring out what law that General Flynn broke, coming up with a law that hasn't been enforced ever in its history, being briefed by Brennan and the others, and in the midst of this, every time I'm the guy. You sure are the guy. You're the guy who was in the midst of this, and you know all about it. And now you're trying to deny it, and you think that the media on the left that supports you, the Democrat, liberal-controlled media, is going to support the dissemination of this information? No way on earth. All
right, folks, we're going to continue to take your phone calls. We got another segment coming up. A lot of phone calls. We're going to get to all of them. If you're on the line now, hang on the line. We're going to go right through them in order of people been on. 1-800-684-3110. Literally, Ben Cisney from our legal team at the ACLJ is preparing to make his argument to the DOJ attorneys right now that basically, quote, a ton of your redaction claims are now completely invalid. So we can take this to court immediately based off the president's own words, as Than said. Think about that. Let it sink in. I'll explain it again when we get back. Welcome back to Jay Sekulow Live. We're going to take your phone calls now, 1-800-684-3110. I mean, Than, You've mentioned this. I want to go to Andy on it too. Andy, the idea now, we fight all these FOIA cases. They always have excuses. Some of those are legitimate. They have legitimate under the law. They have legitimate arguments they can make for not giving over documents. So it's not to say that none of their arguments are legitimate, but you can challenge them. But they just got all of their exceptions wiped out when the president sent this tweet out, Andy, because and I'm sure he has ordered the appropriate people to start instructing those agencies that if it comes to these documents, which we've got FOIAs active on right now, about Comey's spies in the White House, about, all of this, they can't claim any exception that they even normally could under law because he just said declassify everything.
That's right. He said it in very obviously and very clearly. He said, no redactions, exclamation point. In other words, the President of the United States, in his capacity as the Chief Executive Officer and the Commander-in-Chief, has said, I want all these documents out. There are to be no redactions. And that goes to the deep state, to the bureaucrat sitting at his little desk in the State Department or in the Justice Department. It goes to the political appointees and everybody. There are to be no redactions. In other words, no big, thick, black lines covering up what your schemes and your artifices to defraud and to concoct. This stuff has to come out, and it better come out or you've lost your job. That's exactly what the president is saying to these people right now.
Folks, this is a huge deal. It impacts the work of the ACLJ. It impacts all of you getting the information you want, and there's plenty of time between now and Election Day to get a full picture of how involved Joe Biden was in all of this. Don't know if that will persuade who you vote for or not, but the American people deserve to know how involved he was in Hillary Clinton's plot. He knew about it. Obviously, we know that. He was in the brief. He's the last person to unmask Mike Flynn, whose case is still ongoing. I mean, the persecution of Mike Flynn continues even after the DOJ says no because of the federal courts. The absurdity here, the people that need to be perped walk. But I want to go to the phones because people have been hanging on. Let's go to Roger in Minnesota. Line 4, Roger, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Okay, thank you for taking my call. I really appreciate your work. 2 parts to my question. Biden knew about this, right? And to cement the fact, that means he fully supported all of this, right?
He totally. Well, here's what we know. They're being briefed on this about Hillary Clinton. And then we know that they were in meetings about going after Mike Flynn during the transition, and that Biden was the one who brought up the Logan Act, Roger. Do I think Joe Biden is going to be the one hauled off to jail? No. Because I think that there's again, and that's not the key here. The key here for the American people is think about the intelligence agents and the law enforcement agents, not the politicians. Law enforcement agents, FBI agents, Andy, that's who I go to. They have a different level of responsibility. And if they knew this, which we know, I mean, Andy, the second document we have is Peter Strzok being briefed on this by the CIA.
That's right. And he's trying to.
And he calls the president a Russian agent as of now.
Right. He continues to do that and continues to maintain that. But Jordan, to the caller's point, did Biden know? I swear Biden knew. Biden was aware of this. He had access to all this information that was coming from intelligence sources and the intelligence communities. He had all his operatives out there, and he was fully aware of this, and it behooved him to follow the narrative that was being pushed by Hillary Clinton and Brennan and that Obama was briefed on. Of course he knew this. Don't think he didn't know this. He was fully aware of the scheme of the Russian hoax and participated in it because he's part of the swamp. You bring him back, you bring back the swamp.
All right, folks, I'm going to go right back to the phones again, 1-800-684-3110. We're going in order here. Joseph in Arkansas, line 3. Joseph, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Hey, guys, thanks for taking my call. I got a comment and a question. The comment is that Jim Comey certainly didn't have any memory issues when he was writing a book. And I think that all of the swamp didn't worry about any of this happening because they knew Hillary was going to win. That was their ace in the hole. But my question is, with all of this coming to light and after it all gets exposed and examined, will it have anything to do with eliminating Trump's impeachment?
That by the House? No. I mean, could a future House decide to go back and say, I mean, if they wanted to politically and say, because remember, the president ultimately The House impeaches, the Senate tries, and he was found, he was cleared completely. And so Nancy Pelosi's in charge of the House. They ain't doing nothing about that. And remember, that was Ukraine. That was another, that's like another 4 years of investigating how that all came out. I wouldn't mind the president tweeting out an order also to declassify everything related to Colonel Vindman and his twin brother and the Ukraine call and everybody who heard that call and all of their communications. Because the president, all those communications protections, Andy, all that, he just got rid of them.
That's right. By a stroke of the pen and a decree of the president, all that stuff is out, and there is to be no redactions. So we're going to find out the truth. I'm determined to find out the truth, and the way that we're going to do it is by the president fiat, which he has the right to do. They may squawk and moan and carry on about it, but he said no redactions. I want to see everything, and we're going to see everything. I'm convinced of that because the swamp has to be exposed finally, long last.
All right, folks. Again, we're going to try to take these final two calls of the day. So quickly, Ashley in California. Hey, Ashley.
Yes, thanks, guys. Doing great work there. My question is this: if it is proven that President Obama knew about this scandal and these crimes, is there anything in the United States Constitution that prevents him from being charged with a crime?
Is there anything in the U.S. Constitution that prevents for President Obama from being charged with a crime now that he's out of office? No. I mean, you might make arguments that, if he was serving as official capacity, but I'm not worried about going after Obama or even Joe Biden to the extent of putting them in jail. I want to make sure that the FBI can be trusted, the CIA can be trusted to an extent, that they're not going to, again, try and get involved and influence our elections. It is disgusting. And that is where it is the swamp. Politicians, they come and go. It's the swamp, Than. I will take the final call quickly, but Than, it is the swamp that is the problem. It's politicians, they set the tone, they cause trouble, and certainly Democrats are more in line with them, but the swamp is the bureaucracy.
It is, and do you want those same people back in charge, Jordan? I mean, because ultimately that is on the ballot. Do you want the same people back in charge?
Kimberly in Texas, line 1. We got a minute left, Kimberly, but I wanted to get you on.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to say we need to double down and drill down and take the gloves off, because if these people are not held accountable and people don't actually go to jail, we don't have a representative republic and they win. So I want to know who prosecutes Hillary, Comey, Rice, Brennan,
Biden. U.S. attorneys. That's who goes out. If it's Brennan or those folks or Strzok, it's U.S. attorneys, grand juries, federal issue. And now they're going to have all the information they want at their fingertips. They don't have to request it. They don't have to go into classified rooms to read it. People can't argue about whether or not they can get it or not. The president just ordered to hand it all over and no redactions whatsoever. This is still developing, folks. And Washington, I don't care if the CNN's, MSNBC aren't talking about it. They're all scared about who may be knocking on their door and where they might be picked up on the street. Peter Strzok's going to do as many interviews as he can and sell as many books as he can, because this is not going to be good for people like him. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Jay Sekulow Live.